Media.
The cemetery road. For 25 years he drove the same road twice a day, 5 days a week. The cemetery was just another part of the landscape, a gray smear of headstones and gnarled trees barely noticed between the exits. It stretched for miles alongside the highway, a forgotten city of the dead, shadowed by office buildings and factories. He never thought much about it. Sometimes on foggy mornings he would glance over and see the mist curling between the graves, moving strangely, as if something unseen were shifting beneath it. Other times, in the late afternoon, the sun would set behind the tallest monuments, casting long, skeletal fingers of shadow across the ground. But he never looked for long. There was traffic to watch, meetings to prepare for, calls to take. The cemetery was just another thing he passed by. Until the accident. It happened in the blink of an eye. A distracted driver, some kid, phone in hand, eyes on the glowing screen, plowed into him at 70 miles per hour. The world went white, then red, then nothing. When he woke up, he was in the hospital, tubes in his arms, ribs shattered, skull fractured. He almost died. He should have died. They told him later that the first responders were amazed he survived. But something had changed. Something had followed him back. 2 months later, he was back on the road, back to the same commute, the same routine, the same long drive past the cemetery. The first time he heard the voices, he thought it was the radio, a faint murmur just beneath the static, a whisper of something just outside the edge of hearing. He turned the dial, but the sound didn't go away. It wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from outside, from the cemetery. At first, it was just fragments, snatches of conversation, words lost in the wind. Then the voices became clearer. Money is meaningless. It was a man's voice, old, tired, carrying the weight of decades of regret. He flinched, his hands tightening on the wheel. His eyes darted to the cemetery, but there was nothing there. Just the graves, endless and unchanging. He swallowed and told himself he was imagining things. The accident had rattled his brain, left him with some lingering concussion symptoms. That was all. The next day, the voices returned. Your time is precious. Stop pissing it away for money. This time, it was a woman, her voice sharp with anger. Or was it grief? He glanced at the cemetery again, and for just a second, only a second, he thought he saw movement between the stones. A flicker of something pale, shifting behind the graves. The voices grew stronger, more distinct, and they weren't just speaking in generalities anymore. They were telling him things that made his stomach twist. They don't give a damn about you. They're just using you, robbing you of your life's energy. I gave them 30 years of my life, and they fired me 2 weeks before retirement to avoid paying my bonus. He clenched the wheel, his knuckles white. He had worked at his company for 25 years. And how many times had he seen it? The layoffs, the terminations just before pensions kicked in, the people who had poured their souls into the job only to be discarded like garbage. The voices weren't just talking to him, they were talking about him. He started hearing them every day. Each time he passed the cemetery, they reached for him, their whispers curling through the cracks in his mind. He heard men who had spent their lives in offices, working themselves to death for nothing. He heard women who had sacrificed everything for families that barely remembered them. He heard the desperate regrets of those who had been consumed by their own ambition, their love of wealth, their hunger for status. And then there were the children. The first time he heard a child's voice, something inside him broke. Daddy, don't work. I miss you. Come home. His vision blurred. His hands trembled. He could barely keep the car on the road. You promised we'd go to the park, but you never came. You were always too busy. I was scared, but you weren't there. The memories slammed into him. His daughter's birthdays missed because of meetings. The nights he came home too late to tuck her in. The times she had begged him to stay just a little longer, and he had told her he couldn't, that work was too important. He thought he had been doing the right thing, providing, building a future. But now, with these voices filling his head, he saw the truth. He had traded moments he could never get back for something that never really mattered. He stopped sleeping. The voices followed him into his dreams, whispering their regrets, their warnings. The cemetery had become a wound in the world, bleeding into his mind. He couldn't escape it. Then one night, as he drove home, he saw them. They stood along the edge of the cemetery, just beyond the rusted iron fence. Pale figures, barely more than silhouettes, watching him as he passed. Their faces were lost in shadow, their eyes empty, hollow. He didn't want to see them, but he couldn't look away. And then, as he reached the end of the cemetery, one of them stepped forward. A woman, her face lined with sorrow, her hand clutching something small, a child, a boy no older than 5. The boy turned his head, and for a fraction of a second, their eyes met. His son who had never been born, his son who his wife had lost 20 years ago in a pregnancy that ended too soon, a child who had never had a chance to live. And yet, he was there, watching, waiting. The man slammed the brakes, his breath ragged, his body shaking. When he looked again, they were gone, but the voices remained. Time is the only thing that matters. Don't waste it. He didn't go to work the next day, or the day after. He quit his job. He went home to his wife, to his daughter. He spent the days with them, real days, not stolen hours between obligations. He didn't know if the voices would ever leave him. He didn't know if the cemetery would ever stop whispering. But he knew one thing: he wasn't going to be one of them.